Thank you so much for joining us today, Justice Kelly. This interview is a project for the Women Lawyers Association of Michigan. The association's Historic Preservation Committee is attempting to interview as many past presidents of the organization as we can. And you served as president from 1987 to 1988, and my committee members gave me this great honor of interviewing you today, for which I'm very grateful. Briefly, just to introduce you, in addition to serving as the WLAM president, Justice Kelly went on to serve for 8 years on the Michigan Court of Appeals. She is the former Chief Justice of the Michigan Supreme Court, where she served for 16 years, having been elected to the court in 1996 and reelected in 2004. Justice Kelly currently serves as the Distinguished Jurist in Residence at the Wayne State University Law School, where students like me are so lucky that you also teach. So, Justice Kelly, you've had such an impressive career, but today I wanted to focus a little bit on your connection to the Women Lawyers Association of Michigan. So can you tell us, how did you get involved with the WLAM initially?
Initially, I was a member of the Women's Bar Association in Oakland County, and I became more and more interested in the organization and got on the board and eventually was president of WBA. And from there went to the board of WLAM and then became president.
Always in charge, Justice Kelly. So do you remember any challenges that you faced during your term as president?
Yes, back then, WLAM was growing. We put, I remember that we didn't even have our membership into a computerized database at the time. And that was a big deal for us to take that step. Everything, had been done on 3x5 cards, I think, before then. But we were able to handle the expansion of the organization partly through the computerization of our records. I think that at that time, many women lawyers were not interested in joining WLAM because they couldn't see any advantage to women networking among women. And so that was a challenge for us. Obviously, the profession was more dominated by men than it is today. To get ahead, many women lawyers believed they had to network with male lawyers. So it was a challenge, I think, to convince many of them that there was some value in being active with us as well as with male lawyers. And of course, they all needed to join, had to join the State Bar of Michigan as a mandatory bar. So after that, what other bar associations they belonged to took second shrift. Obviously, that choice took second shrift. And some of them simply couldn't afford to join very many other bar associations.
That is so interesting. I hadn't considered that would have been the case. It's such a valuable organization now. And I think mentoring with, finding mentors who are women is so important. So that's really insightful. So what do you wish that you knew now when you entered the leadership pipeline?
Well, I wish that actually before I entered the leadership pipeline, I didn't appreciate what role WLAM could play in my professional life. And it took me a while to wise up. So I think, unlike you, Erin, and many other gifted young women lawyers, I didn't have the benefit of being active with WLAM while in law school. I don't believe the organization was active there then. And there wasn't the mentoring program that exists today. So it took me a while to appreciate why I should get active in it. When I finally understood it, I think I quickly caught on that this was a real benefit. As it was, even today, I think I have still a number of close contacts with women that I networked with back then in the 1980s. And some of them have been warm friendships as well as strong professional affiliations.
That's so great. Um, what did you have specific goals when you took office?
Yes, I remember that it was important to me to see the organization grow and to increase its activities that benefited its members. I remember we did a survey of members asking them what they wanted out of WLAM, and we found that results of that survey very helpful in forming our plans for the future and initiating some new activities and growing the membership. I wanted to see WLAM's importance in the state legal community grow. And that was a challenge and it was fun.
Wow. I'm just thinking about how much it's grown today. I mean, it's everywhere across the state. There are just on this committee, on the Historic Preservation Committee, there are women from across the state meeting together to do this. So it's you all really did grow it into something spectacular. So what was your greatest accomplishment during your term?
Well, let's see. We did grow the membership significantly as a result of that survey, as I indicated to you earlier. Mm-hmm. And we had some very action-packed annual meetings that were well attended. And I remember how much I enjoyed them and how much I thought they added value to our membership. When I ran for judge the first time, I was just coming off the presidency of WLAM, and I found that my presidency there really helped me get elected. It carried with it more respect in the legal community than I had expected. And obviously I was delighted. I think that after my election, WLAM gained more status in the community too. Because of that, I may have been the first president to be elected right after serving as president, elected to a judgeship, at least to an appellate court judgeship.
So you mentioned some of the friendships that you made and your professional connections, but what are some of your favorite WLAM memories?
Well, as I say, I have fond memories of those annual meetings. They gave us a chance to get away from the daily work and concentrate on one another and on the organization. And that's always helpful. As you reflected a little earlier, Aaron, it's a real pleasure to get to meet your peers who come from other places. That's true of national organizations and state organizations. And I had the same pleasure, I think, that you have had in making the acquaintance of people from all over the state and comparing notes and always learning something useful. Some of my favorite memories were just kind of hanging out with some of the women. And as I look back on it, I think many of us had no concept of where we'd go in the profession. I remember, for example, Dawn Van Hoek and I being officers in WLAM together. And I became a judge, and Dawn became, of course, the director of SATO. And some years later, Dawn and I would appear before a Senate committee in the Michigan legislature, arguing for the financial needs of our organizations and working together on that, where the needs of the Supreme Court and SATO overlapped. And I remember being tickled to think how far back we went, Dawn and I.
That's great. So what advice do you have for future presidents of the organization?
Well, I found it, as I said, I found it really helpful to stay in touch with the membership through a survey. There are other ways to do that, to make sure you know as president what the members are thinking and what their needs are for their professional advancement. I think establishing a rapport, and I know much of this has been done, establishing a rapport with the State Bar of Michigan and with other bar associations is very good because there's always strength in numbers. When you have a goal, if it's the same goal other organizations have, working with them can give you a much better chance of success. I think, and I applaud and certainly would recommend continuing the scholarship program that the foundation does for law students and new women lawyers, and taking a very concerted effort to help newly licensed women lawyers find meaningful employment in the profession. And then among those women lawyers who are more established, there's a need, I think, for the organization to help them network so that they can advance themselves professionally. And then ultimately reach out beyond the organization to the community, first to the legal community, then to the general community. There was a time I remember when women lawyers would, at least the Women's Bar Association would evaluate judicial candidates before elections. And I thought that was very valuable. It was a contribution to the public and to the profession, I thought. I think to whatever degree women lawyers can do it in the organization, they should try to find ways to encourage pro bono, take part. You know, Erin, how I'm in, reach out to those in the community who can't afford or otherwise barred from full access to our system, help them get it through their efforts. I think that kind of contribution is appropriate for any mature and strong bar association.
That's great. So was that, did I just ask you about the future presidents, or where you hope the organization goes in the future? Okay, because it's a lot of goals there, but where do you hope the organization does go into the future?
Well, I hope it does get into strengthening what it's already doing, and then to the extent it can, networking and reaching out to the legal community and the general community with service type activities.
And how has WLAM affected your life and career?
Well, there's no question in my mind that my years with WLAM had a big influence on my succeeding and gaining election to the bench. I learned leadership skills there, and I had the pleasure of friendships, as I said earlier, that have lasted throughout my career.
And did you continue your involvement with the organization after your term?
Right, I continued my membership in WLAM and in the foundation. It's now been over 40 years. I've contributed to the foundation, supporting scholarships for women. I've attended many of the meetings of WLAM over the years and of the foundation, and from time to time I've been asked to speak. It's been a real pleasure for me to watch it grow and see the increased confidence and success of the women who are members of it. Back when I began, there were really very few of us, and we were often looked down on, if you will, by men in the profession, and disadvantaged. And I don't see nearly as much of that today as existed back then.
Oh, thank you so much for your answers. I know I said that we would focus on the WLAM today, but I can't resist asking some broader questions about your incredible career. How has the profession changed for women since you began, and what has it been like being a trailblazer, like every step of the way?
Well, it isn't as if I mean, there were some women who came before me blazing the trail for sure, and I followed in their lead. But it was true back then when I went to Wayne Law School that there weren't many women role models to follow. And I think in our class of about 100, there were 5 or 6 women. Now, the woman who was top in the class became the first woman vice president of the Ford Motor Company, Helen Petroskas, after serving in their chief counsel office for some years. She moved into administration and became top administrator in charge of our environmental matters, and frequently testified before Congress on behalf of Ford. And so she was she was certainly a standout success. And I think today, as I look at people like you and the other women in the law school classes, I can see that you're not burdened by as much of the prejudice that we put up with way back in the 80s. You have, I think, a clear path to reach your goals. And not that there isn't still bias, because there is. It's just a much better situation. More scholarships are available. Student loans, of course, weren't available at all back then in the 80s, and they are now. So I see women reaching out for positions with much less hesitancy than they did back in the 80s. And I see that as a huge improvement.
And do you have any advice for women entering the profession today?
Well, sure. I mean, I really hardly know where to begin. Any woman who's interested in holding public office, including a judgeship, has to be just scrupulously careful about not running afoul of any kind of ethical requirement or legal requirement, of the law, so as to have an impeccable record to present to the public. I think women should not be afraid to try to take chances, reasonable chances, but still risks, because otherwise it's unlikely that they'll advance the way they want to, and they have to be braced for the occasional failure. But that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes you learn from failures and come back all the stronger. I do notice, I think a lot of young people are intent on not making any mistakes, and become unnecessarily uptight about choices. And I know it's easy for me to say, but unnecessarily uptight about making choices because of the fear that it won't go right. I found that I had to explore different avenues in the law before I kind of hit my niche, found my niche. I know that some people know what they're going to do, exactly what they're going to do from age 10, but I think many of us don't. And even now, I think among the women I see in law school, I realize that a good many of them are uncertain of just exactly what they're going to do with their legal degree, and where they're comfortable, where they're going to be really comfortable working. You definitely want to find a place in the profession where you where you can really feel as if you're contributing, and that makes you happy when you wake up in the morning to go to work.
So true. Oh, Justice Kelly, that's all I have for you today. I thank you so much for your leadership in this organization and your continued presence there, and just for the incredible example you set for everyone in the profession. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I applaud you for doing this research. I think it's marvelous.
Great, thank you.